What is globalization? Has globalization been able to spread justice all over the world? Stay tuned for current events. Globalization is a known event among all scholars and academics. Some have argued that globalization is a process that goes on its own, such as a ball that slides down the slope or a seed that is planted, and if it is ready, begins to grow and develop also on its own. It is said that globalization is also a process that starts from somewhere and evolves and goes along with the advancement of science, technology, and communication. While the other group does not think positively about this phenomenon, and they believe that globalization is not a process, it is a project. It means that globalization is a plan for the colonization of the world by some of the great states, but under the name of globalization. The creators of this project want to dominate the world, and as the West will face the energy crisis in the future, hence they will need the world's energy. They also believe that the plan of this project is well designed to preserve the Western culture and dominate it over the other cultures. So as they say, this is a project in which some of the parts are being carried out and some other parts are being completed either now or in the future. So the domination of the West in this world will be more revealing and it will become clearer in the future. On the other hand, we know that according to the ahadith and narrations, the governance of Imam Mahdi, may Allah hasten his reappearance, is universal, where it dominates the West and the East, and we can hear the voice of worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from everywhere on the earth, and justice will be spread all around the globe. Of course, this hope is rooted in the thoughts of all peoples and nations and is known in different ways everywhere. But in Shia thought, it is so clear that in such a way that the last Imam who they are waiting for him is now alive. One day he will come after Allah's command and fill the world with justice. The question here is whether there is any link between globalization project and the reign of Imam Mahdi. Today in this episode of Current Events, we are going to ask some questions in this regard from Sheikh Morteza Maash, head of Al-Nabat Research Institute. And so as new technologies emerge in this world, the idea of globalization is inevitable, especially between the experts of each field. For the first question, I would like you to clarify the idea of globalization or the project of globalization to our dear viewers.
Globalization began after the end of the Cold War between Western countries who were ruled by the capitalist policies and the countries of the East, or in other words, the Soviet Union, were ruled by the communist policies. It can also be said that the advancement of technology in the world, such as the internet and mass communication networks and satellites, has raised this thought in the minds of all scholars that the world has become just like a small village. Hence, scholars claim the emergence of globalization, which was based on liberal and capitalist thinking, and also considered that with the advent of globalization, the dream of all philosophers and scientists is being achieved. Because due to the technological and scientific advances and achievements that the West has achieved today, it's much easier and faster to link human beings than ever before. So the point where every news and incident that happens on the side of the earth immediately is transmitted to the other side and can be heard and seen at the same time. Where some news networks and satellites even spoke of predicting the news before it happens, and we see even Mr. Fukuyama published a book in this regard. He believes that we have reached the end of history, so he published a book named End of History, and gave tidings of victory for liberal and capitalist policies. And as we see today, due to globalization, liberalistic and capitalistic policies have reached its highest level. So we can clearly claim that the concept of globalization is a Western concept indeed, where the West tries to extend its dominance over the entire world and rule the other countries in line with its own interests and benefits.
Now, which countries are benefiting the most from this idea of the globalization?
تعتبر أمريكا هي أكثر الدول في العالم.
Some use the term Americanization instead of the word globalization. That is, they felt that globalization would mean Americanization because they believe that the project of globalization is an American project, according to which the United States would expose its dominance and expand its control over the world by dominating their ideas. Because the United States is economically and technologically one of the biggest countries in the world, on the other hand, it has full control over the internet. As we now know, one of the channels that makes the concept of globalization a tangible concept is the internet and especially social networks. Therefore, they believe that globalization was an American project, and there is no other purpose than Americanizing the world for the interests of the USA. Finally, this idea expanded among some countries in the world where they oppose globalization because they believed that the United States is trying to dominate the world using its ethical and behavioral theories. As far as we can see, people over the world wear what Americans wear or read and study what Americans read and study. And even in the food industry, people eat what Americans eat. They consume American products like McDonald's, hamburgers, which are famous all around the world. American cinema and American illustration is one of those things that produce more than 90% of the cinematic productions in the world. Facebook has become one of the ways to control the people of the world by the United States. WhatsApp and Twitter and Google and Microsoft, all of these represent American values. That is why many believe that the project of globalization is an American project to protect American economic, political, and cultural values and interests. Therefore, the US is one of the most important countries in the globalization project, whether economically or politically or culturally. So back to your question, if we resemble the globalization project to a train, America is the country that drives this train. Of course, there are other countries that have benefited from the globalization project. For example, European countries and China are amongst the countries that have benefited the most from the globalization because it has opened boundaries to the world markets, and other countries became markets for buying Chinese products. Also, Germany has benefited from this project a lot. Even governmental agencies, which are members in the International Monetary Fund, have benefited a lot from the globalization project, as well as world banks by becoming increasingly globalized, because they became able to expand their branches and financial and economic programs to many countries in the world. As a result, it can be said that some countries and institutions have benefited a lot from this issue, whereas some other countries have benefited less. In the case of people, we can also say that some people were able to benefit from globalization because they became familiar with the new thoughts and ideas. And news agencies have benefited a lot from globalization because they were able to break the issue of whoring or hoarding the news by big news companies, and all can now establish a news and cultural station regarding their stability. People can have a satellite for themselves or start their own internet page and publish the news around the world. Of course, it should not be forgotten that authoritarian organizations were able to take advantage of many issues of globalization and expand their authoritarian ideologies in the world, causing much trouble and riots in the world. For example, today we can see that many tyrannical countries now have full domination over the internet and prevent people from having full access to the internet. And we notice that they didn't or don't restrict people's freedom and access of immoral resources and sexual videos, but they limit the people's freedom to achieve issues that express the opinions, thoughts, rights, and ideas of the people. Autocratic countries have increasingly benefited from globalization, and its facilities because they have wealth and power. Hence, although many have achieved or benefited from this globalization train, but those who have been harmed in this regard are much more than the benefited ones.
What are the reasons for the advancement and growth of these countries? Are the reasons based on humanity and the purpose of the creation of humankind?
المشكلة الأساسية التي موجودة في قضية العولمة.
The fundamental problem that arises in the discussion of globalization is that the basis of the problem is the capitalist thinking. This thinking concentrates only on the pure benefit, no matter how it is gained or how valuable it is. While the capitalist thinking is not a human-centered thinking or ideology, but is profit and benefit-centered. Therefore, we see that the capitalist thinking tries to benefit from every single thing, such as profiting from selling arms or drug sales, money laundering, abusing others, speculation, gambling, sexual affairs, and alcoholic beverages. All of these show that capitalism concentrates only on profit and interest rather than other moral aspects, even if its profits lead to human slaughter or enslavement. Therefore, we see today that the Western countries, which have human rights and liberty as their principles, these countries themselves, in pursuit of their profit and expediency, are subverting these principles. And this is only because of their point of view and ideology of capitalism, which says profit is superior to values. That is why the project of globalization is said to be a capitalist project. A project is based on profit, not on the basis of human principles. This project does not seek to achieve human goals. Here, I can give you a very simple example regarding globalization, which shows this project is a beneficial project without considering the human needs as its basic ideology. For example, in the case of migration of people to Europe, many people today have abandoned their countries due to fear of terrorism and killing and have become refugees in Western countries. The problem here is how the assassinations and murder began in the country. Western countries have waged their wars in these Middle Eastern countries, and each Western country tries to have a share in the region of these countries. Hence, they are selling weapons to these Middle Eastern countries in order to start the flames of wars and to gain more profit from this war. But when the people of these countries become refugees due to these wars and killings, they face walls and obstacles in their way set by those Western countries. Western countries prevented immigrants from entering their countries and oppressed them and behaved with this migration as a threat to Europe and a threat to the Western world. Today, we see that Mr. Trump is trying to build a wall between Mexico and the United States. European countries started to expand immigrants from their countries due to political and human issues. Right now, if one goes and sees, will find that many immigrants are living in garbage places and in very hard conditions. They die because of cold and malnutrition and heart diseases, which they get infected with during the migration process. This is the Western image of capitalism, which deals with the others in a biased way. For example, in the United States, it's prevented for Muslims to travel freely on the pretext that they are Muslims and they may be terrorists, while no traveling limitation is applied for the followers of other religions. And we see that the US prevents Muslims from entering its borders when they themselves cannot deny that people of those banned countries did not carry out any terrorist operations inside the United States. The Western fanaticism is exactly at conflict with the human principles that even those Western countries claim it in international organizations, such as the United Nations, and this is a very big contradiction, which is seen in globalization.
So as we see in those Western countries that are ruled by capitalism, and as it is clear they are not based on human principles, so if you can kindly name the governments throughout history which actually applied the teachings of God on earth.
الدين الإسلامي ينطلق من الرحمة والإنسان.
The religion of Islam is based on mercy and humanity, where God says in the Holy Quran, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, the only reason we sent you as a messenger was to be a mercy for all the creatures in both worlds. The religion of Islam is based on mercy and humanity, and this was implemented by the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, and his family, and the commander of the faithful Ali bin Abi Talib, peace and blessings be upon him, during his rule. The policy which is based on the human principles and that which God says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, O mankind, indeed we have created you from male and female, and made you nations and tribes that you may know one another. Indeed, the most noble of you in the sight of Allah is the most righteous of you. This verse represents the foundation of creation and humanity, which is expressed by the religion of Islam and the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, and his family. Human-based policies are politics without any racial or tribal discrimination. All humans are the same as the comb blades. This policy is based on tolerance and forgiveness, and the opportunity for all human beings, and justice and affection and kindness among all human beings. Therefore, we see that the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, and his family, was the first man who published the first human rights document when he changed the name of Yathrib to Medina, and this document is known as Medina Covenant. This document is a civilized document that emphasizes peaceful coexistence and peace between religions and other peoples, and claims that the society must be based on humanity. We see that the life of the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, and his family, and his rule were based on peace and non-violence, as well as the policy of forgiveness and pardon, where the Holy Quran says, "All you who have believed, enter into peace completely." For instance, when the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, and his family, won against his enemies in Mecca, he said to them that you are released. And the Holy Quran says, when the victory of Allah has come and the conquest, and you see the people entering into the religion of Allah in multitudes. We should notice that the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, achieved this conquest because of his unique behavior and the ideology of Islam, which is based on peace. We also witnessed the rule of Imam Ali, the commander of the faithful, peace and blessings be upon him, that was based on humanity and peace. The commander of the faithful, Ali, peace be upon him, destroyed all the bias of racism and ruled with equality and justice. He never preferred Arab over the non-Arab people, or white over black people, but he always ruled with justice and equality. And this is the behavior that reflects the principle of Islam and the rule of Islam and the manner and behavior of the Ahlul Bayt, peace and blessings be upon them. A policy based on human dignity and freedom. And these are two very valuable examples that can be pointed out, while there are lots of examples within the rule of the commander of the faithful and the Holy Prophet which can be researched and talked about. Also, we can use these examples and experiences to learn from them and apply them in our life today. Some governments and countries, which we can call them advanced countries, have learned and applied some of these experiences from the rule of the commander of the faithful, Imam Ali, and the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings be upon them all, and their country. These experiences are such valuable and outstanding examples from the history of human life, which cannot be neglected.
We thank both of our guests for joining us today on Current Events. Dear viewers, we have finished our discussion with Sheikh Morteza Maash. You can find the YouTube link of this episode on Imam Hussein's main page and Current Events Facebook page at facebook.com/IHTV Current Events. Don't forget to share your ideas and feedback with us on our social media networks shown below on your screen. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.